Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As per usual, a big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode of the show, liked, commented, all that kind of stuff. Very, very much appreciated. I think I've caught up with everybody's comments. I'm pretty certain I caught up with everybody's comments the other day, in actual fact. So, but anyway, yeah, keep comments coming. Always love to read them, and keep liking. And if you haven't subscribed, you've just found my channel and you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. And for those of you that have subscribed, spread the news, please. Anyway, so this week's episode of the show, thought back time for murdering the English language there already, and I haven't only just started. I thought it was about time to do another episode of the show on rum. As you know, I enjoy a good rum. And I know a lot of you enjoy my rum episodes of the show, and yes, I should probably do more of them. So, yeah, this week's episode of the show is dedicated to the independent rum bottling company, Mezan Rums, owned by Marussia Beverages. So, big thank you to Marussia Beverages for the samples for today's episode of the show. These came my way in July of this year when they released a new set of releases, and so what we had was obviously the new set of releases plus their two, I suppose for want of a better word, core bottlings, the Jamaican XO and the Shaqiri. So I thought, yeah, let's take a look at them. I mean, I've always been a big fan of what Mezan have been doing. They bottle some great rums. They're sort of obviously non-filtered but non-coloured. Well, maybe the XO is probably filtered because it's bottled at 40%, whereas everything else is bottled at 46%. So no colouring, and you know, some interesting bottlings that they do. So obviously predominantly sort of vintage dated bottlings, which obviously change from time to time as they sell out, and there's I think there's a lot of people that really like the Mezan range. Certainly, I think they're fairly widely available. Certainly here in the UK, I would imagine they're probably available in Europe. Don't know whether they're available in the States or not, but if they are, certainly worth taking a look at. So. This is not the first episode of the show I've done on Mezan, so I'm not going to go into any great detail about the company. I think this might be the third. I certainly did one last year, so it's kind of like, well, this is the once a year Mezan episode of the show, isn't it? From time to time when I do rum episodes, if I have the odd sample from them knocking about, you know, I may well sort of slip it in, as they say. So on that note, I think it's time to just take a look at today's lineup. Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with the Mezan Jamaican XO. So one imagines a blend of, you know, different distilleries on Jamaica. Always been a good sort of go-to. I wouldn't quite say entry level. It's a bit sort of above entry level, I think. But certainly it kind of showcases what Mezan are trying to do quite nicely, I think. And then we're going to move on to the first of the vintage dated bottlings. This is a 12-year-old Jamaican. It was distilled on the column stills at Musk in 2010. It spent 3 years aging, one imagines, in Jamaica. They say tropical aging. I must admit that what I do like about the labelling and what have you for the vintage dated bottlings, lots of information. I mean, if you go onto the Mezan website, I mean, there's a link obviously in the box below. There's all the information about which distilleries they come from, how long they've spent aging in situ, how long they've spent maturing in Europe. So basically this has spent 3 years in the tropics, what one imagines Jamaica, and 9 years in in Europe. Could be the UK, could be anywhere, you know. All right, so I said they tell you everything, and they're a bit vague about this one, but Anyway, so it's essentially it's spent sort of like, you know, the first 3 years of its life in, you know, in one imagines Jamaica, so that's good. It's not a case of sort of like, yep, stick it in a gas, ship it straight out to Europe. But it's interesting. It's a sort of question as to sort of how whether we can sort of pick up any sort of influence on the fact that it's only spent 3 years in Jamaica, and obviously, you know, once it gets to Europe, completely different climate, environment, that kind of thing. Does that have a sort of like an effect on the spirit itself? Possibly. Anyway, we shall obviously find out when we taste it. Next bottling is a single cask. I don't think they've done too many single cask bottlings. Certainly, I think this may well be the first of the single cask bottlings that I've tasted. So again, another Jamaican. This is a 16-year-old. This is distilled on the pot stills at Worthy Park. And it spent 3 years aging, one imagines, again in Jamaica, and 13 years in Europe. Next bottling we'll be moving on to is a Guyanan. This was distilled on the Savile 4-column still at the Diamond Distillery, and as you well know, Diamond is a repository for stills from defunct distilleries. So it's got the sort of the last of the wooden pot and column still from oh, the name eludes me now, Enmore, isn't it? And a number of another motley collection of stills and what have you. So anyway, so this is quite interesting because that's the whole thing. If you know the sort of like the El Dorado range, which is obviously produced at Diamond, you'll know that each of the age statements is a sort of a blend in its own right, using sort of like the different stills that they own. So always nice to see sort of an individual, and as you well know, they don't sort of, well, I think they might do the odd bottling I've seen of the individual stills. Hampton is the other one, not Hampton. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we're not talking about them. We're talking about these. So anyway, yeah. So this is the Guyana. It's 11 years old, distilled on the Savile 4-column still at Diamond. Again, 3 years aging in situ, and a further 8 in Europe. Last of the vintage bottlings is the Dominican Republic. This is from the AFD distillery and distilled on its 5-column still. It is 10 years old and was distilled in 2012. Again, 3 years aging in situ and 7 in Europe. And finally, we're going to end with the, I suppose, like I said, the other core bottling, I guess, which is the Shaqiri. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a Moscatel cask finish Panamanian rum. So, although they don't actually say where this one comes from, but I have a feel, certainly in the past, most of the Panamanian rums they've bottled have been from Don Jose, so I'm going to assume it's Don Jose. So it's 40%. It's been distilled on column stills and aged in ex-bourbon and then finished in ex-Moscatel cask. Don't know how long the finishing period was, but we shall see what that's like, because that sounds quite intriguing. In actual fact, you don't come across an awful lot of cask finished rums, so well, not outside of Seals anyway, and Foursquare. So yeah, I think this is going to be quite an interesting lineup. So let's kick off with the Jamaican XO then. Okay, so let's see what the XO gives us then. Right, I have a bit of a problem here. Now, I don't have a problem with the quality of what I'm sticking my nose into. The problem I have is this has dramatically changed. Now, this is quite Hampton-y, Worthy Parky. It's got that sort of edgy, sort of almost kind of Guyanan-like character, as opposed to what I tend to think of as more of a sort of a Jamaican character. I mean, I know this is obviously mean from Jamaica, and it's like basically saying all whiskies from Speyside taste of X, and all rums from Jamaica taste like Appleton Estate. Well, they don't, obviously. You know, that's a stupid thing to say. But Now, I would imagine, like I said in the introduction, that this is a blend from the various distilleries on Jamaica, and in the past it has tended towards the more broader, the lusher style of Jamaican rum, like what's bottled by Appleton Estate, and this is completely different. Now, I don't have a problem with that per se. The problem I have is that you don't get any information on. I mean, I've just gone into the fact and said that they have lots of information about their vintage bottlings, but nothing about this. This is why I like batch bottlings. If you're going to do a core bottling and you know that it may well change over time, put a batch on it, put a batch number on it. It tells the consumer, it tells the retailer that there's something maybe possibly different here. Because if you bought this, say 4 or 5 years ago, and then you buy it again today, it's not the same, completely different. Now, I know that obviously because the XO has been around for now quite a while, you can't put a batch on it. I mean, it would be stupid. Everybody would be going, what the hell are you doing? So, this is my suggestion. Now, powers that be at Mezan can take it or leave it and, say I'm talking at my arse if you want, but tell us what's in the bottle. Tell us the makeup, why, what's the point in hiding it? It's not sort of like, trade bloody secrets, is it? Other distilleries, other bottlers are really sort of upfront about what they're putting in the bottle. Why not tell us what's gone in the bottle? It could be sort of like 45% Hampton, 10% Worthy Park, etc., etc. And then we've got some kind of visual clue to say, this has possibly changed in character because there's 10% more sort of Hampton and sort of so on and so forth. But anyway, yeah, that's that gripe aside, and like I said, whether anybody's going to take any notice of it from Mezan anyway is of course another matter. But anyway, coming back to those, it's like I said, it's very different to how it used to be. It is more kind of underripe green banana, sort of definite column still characters coming through. It's a little bit of pot still weight underneath. I mean, it's still a lovely blend at the end of the day. I mean, touch of green spice, bit tamarind almost. I love that edginess. I mean, this is a real rum, at the end of the day. But like I said, I can't keep coming back to the fact that it isn't what it was, you just sort of. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to taste it now. A little fuller, a little bit more weight, a little bit more tropical dried fruit, but again, we've got that green fruit, that green underripe banana, that edginess, that not quite Hampton. There's a bit of a sort of ish Hampton-y, funky kind of character. It's kind of more, reminds me a little bit more of Worthy Park with that edginess. It's quite young. It's a little on the short side. It does kind of like taper off a little bit. Again, that sort of funky herbal character is coming back. I mean, it's a lovely rum at the end of the day. It's good value for money. I don't think it's much over about 30 something quid, isn't it? Something like that, mid 30s. Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's a lovely bottling. But like I said, I keep coming back to the fact that this is a vastly different kettle of fish to what it used to be, in my personal opinion. I could be wrong, could be completely talking out my butt, and that they haven't actually changed the blend or anything like that, but certainly I'm pretty certain that has changed quite dramatically. And like I said, if it has, tell us. Right, okay, so on to the Money Musk Jamaican. So this is 12 years old. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Quite high toned, slightly honeyed, quite funky. There's a lovely sort of balance of light column still aromas with some rich, slightly oily American oak, touch of sultana, marzipan, potpourri. That's a nice nose. The oak is becoming a lot more noticeable as it gets warmed up and sort of, as it's been sitting in the glass aerating. It's quite, I mean, is this possibly because it's spent more time in Europe than it has in Jamaica that the oak is more prevalent? Possible. Is it that they could maybe used a little bit more sort of more active casks? Again, I don't know what the vatting is, but it's a nice nose. And it's got that sort of, like I said, interesting character. I mean, because when you think about Jamaica, you think about Hampton at one end of the spectrum, and then you think at the other end of the spectrum you have Appleton Estate, and you have varying degrees of difference between the two, and it shares some elements, I guess, with Worthy Park possibly. Again, it's got that slight funkiness, but there's also a richness there, and that is a nice nose. Sure, pass on. Less oak on the palate, more herbal, more funk. Again, light column still dried fruit, sort of lighter, sort of sultana-y kind of dried apricot, a little bit of dried banana, some potpourri. Again, there's some underripe fruit. There's that edginess kind of coming in, almost mentholy kind of note on the aftertaste. It's got a real palate cleansing character. It's a lovely rum. I really like that. That's really impressive. I mean, there's a bit of a disconnect to a certain extent between the nose and the palate. Maybe it would have been nice to have a little bit more oak on the palate, but I think that's got a really nice progression, and yeah, that's not too bad. Okay, so let's move on to the Jamaican single cask. So this is a 16-year-old, and this one is from Worthy Park. I've been going banging on about Worthy Park for quite a while, but let's actually get a nose in this one then. Again, herbal, funky, green pepper, green tropical fruit, pineapple, menthol, eucalyptus, really tight. It's quite tight. I mean, this is only 46%, but it feels really tight. There's a nice maturity to it. It's got a sort of an aged rancio. There's a little bit of coffee, some cacao, a little bit of vanilla. Now, this I believe isn't a particularly cheap bottling, but it's a very, very good bottling. It's a very good cask. Lovely intensity. Just a beautiful natural character. There's obviously no sugar here at all. It's not sweet. It's just a bloody good rum at the end of the day. Let's see what the parts on. Heavier, denser, more weight, definite pot still character, a bit of molasses kind of coming through as well. Again, quite herbal, quite funky, quite dry. Alcohol is very noticeable for 46%. It's emphasising those spices, those green spices, green pepper, green tropical fruit, green banana. Slightly oily, again, funkiness coming back on the finish. But it's not as funky as Hampton. I mean, it is not Hampton. I mean, it is not sort of like, God, that's weird. This is kind of like Hampton Light, I suppose. So if you wanted to sort of, find out what all the fuss is about with regards to sort of, that kind of style of whiskey, rum, sorry, then, you know, this is a good one to go for, because it's giving you that kind of sort of lead into Hampton, and then if you feel like you're brave enough, then you can take it on. Or conversely, you just buy a bloody bottle of Hampton and go for it, full stop. You know, why not? People do that with, I mean, you know, it used to be the sort of way, oh, start with the Space Size, move into your Highlands, then do the Islers eventually when you've kind of built up to it. Nowadays, everyone just goes, well, what's all this peat business? You know, let's have an Ardbeg or something, you know. But anyway, I digress. That is a bloody good cask, that's all I can say. Okay, so let's move on to the 11-year-old Guyanan. So let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Elegant, quite honeyed, relatively straightforward. There's not a great deal of complexity, it has to be said. Slightly herbal, a little bit of green pepper, white pepper, plenty, reasonable amount of oak. It's okay. It's pleasant. It's nice. It, you know, just doesn't have the intensity of the previous couple of bottlings. Yeah, maybe it's the still, you know, maybe this is just the way that the Savile still kind of comes off, and, you know, maybe this is why the distillery tends to blend a lot of the stills together, you know, because although this has got some nice character, it's kind of limited a little bit, shall we say. But on the flip side of the coin, you know, you don't see it that often, and it's an interesting insight into, you know, what the still brings to a rum. And this is one of the great things about rums, and this is what I love about rums, is that distilleries have such a broad canvas to play with, you know, several different styles of still. You can then blend those together, you can bottle the individual stills, you can do whatever the hell you like, you know, it's great. But sometimes it can be a bit like sort of a component, shall we say. Anyway, let's see what pass on. It's a bit like the notes. It's pleasant, it's straightforward, it's simple, a little bit of honey, some dried fruit, a little bit of spice maybe, touch of oak. I mean, it's all very nice at the end of the day. And I've tasted a lot more interesting rums from Diamond, and certainly sort of like when you're talking about the wooden stills, and they have this intense woodiness, you know. And yeah, there's some of the stuff I've tasted from Diamond have been absolutely stunning. This, unfortunately, is a bit nice. It's a bit straightforward. It's simple. It's pleasant. It's not going to get you excited in any shape or form, but it's nice. It's okay. You know, it is what it is at the end of the day. So let's move on to the Dominican Republic. So this is the AFD distillery. Let's see what nose gives on this thing. That's an appealing nose. Lots of toasty oak. I'm getting a lot of fresh vanillins. A little bit of wood spice, some column still notes. Definitely get that lighter, high-toned dried fruit. Cinnamon, earth, oak is possibly getting a little bit dominating, but it's bringing some sweetness. I'm getting some desiccated coconut, yeah, grilled nuts, toast. It's a very appealing nose. It's a lovely nose, it has to be said. You can argue it's maybe not the most complex of noses you've ever come across, but sometimes you just want whiskey, or rum, cognac, whatever, that just kind of delivers a lovely nose. You know, you don't necessarily want to spend, you know, an hour or so kind of like picking it apart. You just want to stick your nose in the glass and go, oh, you know what? That's a nice nose. And I don't mean that in a nice, as in a nice derogatory term. It is a lovely nose. I like this. It's got an awful lot going for it. It's got a kind of, yeah, almost kind of grain whisky-ish sort of demeanour. I mean, that's obviously the stills. It's the column stills. But it's got that kind of, I mean, this is where the thing about grain and, you know, column distilled rum tends to sort of meet sometimes. You often get grain whiskies that do have this kind of, almost kind of rummy kind of dried fruit kind of character. And this is a rum that's kind of thinks it's a grain whiskey. Lovely. Let's see what pass one. That's a nice counterbalancing kind of palate. On the one hand, it's a bit quite tight, quite spicy with the column still fruit. There's also a nice richness there. I mean, the oak is quite noticeable and adding that richness, and it's kind of almost emphasising a sort of a pseudo honey kind of note. It's a touch of earth, brown sugar. Again, I love that edgy column still, almost grain whiskey like kind of nip that it has. And it just kind of like, you know, just means that the oak is not kind of like getting too out of control. It's kind of keeping that all in check. I mean, the finish is lovely. I mean, it's got a lovely kind of tingling finish, and I like that. That's an impressive rum. Yeah. Right. Okay. So on to the final rum of this afternoon. This is the Shaqiri. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. I mean, you know me and pronunciation. Anyway, let's see what the nose gives. It's alright. It's a bit simple. It's got some funky, slightly column still kind of notes. Bit of demerara, bit of grapey wininess. It's all a bit nice again, you know, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It is a nice, pleasant nose. There's no kind of edge to it. There's no, you know, the Moscatel is very, very soft, very polished. There's no rough edges there. It's not kind of like, you know, and I guess this is obviously what the blenders wanted to get, you know. They didn't want something kind of a bit rough and a bit raw and a bit sort of like, you know, rip your head off kind of thing. They wanted a bit more of a mass market product, and this is what it is. It's nice, it's pleasant. You know, you enjoy a good rum, you're gonna kind of like this, you know. You might not buy it for yourself, but you know, somebody might buy it for you as a present, and if they did, you know, you wouldn't be disappointed. I mean, it's a nice nose again, you know. It's see what pass one. It's a bit insubstantial. I mean, when you think about it, you know, the Moscatel should be really imparting a lot more sort of grapey, winey, sort of almost sort of late harvested honey kind of character, and it's kind of a bit And this is all basically because it's bottled at 40%. It just has not got the balls at the end of the day, you know. Even I think if they'd bottled it to 43%, it may well have given it a little bit more intensity. It's all a bit kind of nice, safe. And you know, I can see this is who they're aiming this at. They're aiming this at people that don't, or probably never have drunk rum before, and they're obviously bottling at 40% to keep the costs down. I mean, this is, yeah, and you know, I don't want to basically sound sort of like, you know, up my own arse, but you know, compromises feed through at the end of the day, and this is what I think this is you know, shoot me if you like, you know. And I'm sure the powers that be at Mezan are probably thinking, well, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But all right, it's not aimed at me. You know, the rest of the range is aimed at me. The sort of the vintage stuff. And okay, so putting that to one side, it's a pleasant rum. I can see who it's aimed at. I can see what market it's aimed at, and you know, great. It's a good quality product, and if you enjoyed that, then hopefully that would then lead you on to experimenting with other rums, other rums in the Mezan range, or just other rums full stop. It's a lead in. It's sort of like, you know, to kind of get you by the nose ring and sort of like pull you in kind of thing. But you know, for sort of, I suppose, you know, more seasoned palates, it's not really your kind of cup of tea. It's not really my thing either. But that's fine. You know, when you have a range, you need to cater for a broad selection of people at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the things that Mezan do really well. They do, you know, emphasise that. You know, they have, you know, something for everybody at the end of the day, or something for every rum or not necessarily rum drinker at the end of the day. They have something for everybody at the end of the day. So that's got to be lauded, in my opinion. Okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. I think it's been an interesting tasting. I think I've maybe been a little bit critical about some things, but you know, I think overall, like I said, you have to be sort of impressed with what Mezan are actually doing. Jamaican XO, like I said, I think I said plenty about that. I think nothing wrong with changing your blends or anything like that, you know, but at least kind of give the general public and retailers at the end of the day a clue, an idea that you have actually changed the recipe of that particular bottling. The Jamaican, yeah, I think that was really very, very good. Musk, not such a well-known distillery, I guess, as some of the others. Had that sort of a little bit more oak character on the nose, maybe less on the palate. Maybe I would have liked a little bit more oak on the palate. But even so, I think a really, really good rum. And the single cask was bloody good. I mean, that really was very, very impressive. I mean, that was kind of classic Worthy Park again, and this is the lovely thing about all of their bottlings. They are very much true to the individual distilleries that had that sort of lovely kind of herbally kind of character. Not quite the Hampton level, but you know, leading you kind of into that kind of sort of style. The Guyanan, okay, so it was pleasant. It was sort of, you know, somewhat complexity challenged, I suppose, but it is what it is. It's off the sort of the Savile column still, and it just basically goes to show that sometimes, you know, these are really just sort of like component parts, and there really wasn't enough complexity there to sort of like, you know, really make that a superb bottling. But it is what it is at the end of the day, I suppose. The Dominican Republic bottling, yeah, again, lovely rum. I don't really know that particular distillery very well at all, so it's not. I don't really kind of have, I suppose, a sort of a benchmark in my head for that particular distillery. But it was nice. It had that kind of grain whiskey kind of column still character, which I really enjoyed. And I think if you like grain whiskey, you would certainly find some synonyms in that particular bottling. And the Shaqiri, okay, so it's obviously aimed at a specific market. Brilliant, great, does its job really well. If it's going to be a lead into sort of, you know, getting possible consumers to sort of, like, you know, should we say, explore the wonderful world of rums, then great. You know, for me, yeah, it's, as I said, it's a sort of like a little bit simplistic, not really enough going on personally for that. But like I said, it's not really kind of aimed at me or sort of you know, some of you guys that are sort of obviously very much into your rums. But like I said, overall, you taking a sort of an overall view of what Mezan are doing, I think they're bottling some bloody good stuff at the end of the day. And if you love your rums, check them out, find them if they're available in your market, and enjoy them. So anyway, that's this week's episode of The Show in the Bag. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope, you know, if any of the head honchos from Mezan are watching, then, you know, you'll sort of see that, you know, it's been a sort of a fair review, and yeah, who knows, maybe they will take on board some of my suggestions, certainly with regards to the XO. Then again, they might not, but anyway, that's life, as they say. So until next week, all that's left to say is good afternoon and good ramming.